Emma Hartley always believed that life changed quietly, without warning, without loud moments announcing a shift. But that winter, she felt the change before she understood it. It came in the form of small pauses in conversations, glances that carried more emotion than words, and the strange heaviness in her chest when she walked home in the evenings. She didn't know exactly what was happening, but she sensed something important was moving beneath the surface, like a tide pulling back before a wave rises. Her life in the coastal town of Willow Harbor in Maine was steady and predictable. She worked at a small independent bookstore tucked between a cafe and a flower shop. The bookstore wasn't busy most days, but it had a warmth that made people linger. Mostly because of Emma. She had a calm presence that made others feel understood. She noticed everything: how customers hesitated before buying a certain book, how tourists paused to breathe in the familiar smell of old pages, but she rarely spoke about her own inner world. She carried her thoughts gently, quietly. It was at this bookstore that Liam Parker first walked into her life 8 months earlier. He came in looking for a book on local lighthouses for a design project. Emma remembered the moment clearly because he seemed surprised by how small the shop was, yet relieved by the quietness it offered. Liam had a gentle way of speaking, soft but sincere, as though he weighed each word before letting it go. There was an openness in his eyes that Emma found disarming. After that day, Liam returned again and again, sometimes for books, sometimes just for conversation. He never said that's why he came, but Emma could tell. He always entered with a subtle smile, like the bookstore was a place he felt safe in. Over time, their conversations drifted from design, work, and books to childhood stories, hopes, and the things they feared would never happen. They became friends without trying to. It just happened naturally, with no dramatic turning point, only many small, meaningful moments. Emma found herself looking forward to his visits more than she admitted. She noticed how her heartbeat quickened when she heard the bell above the door ring. She noticed how her breath changed when his sleeve brushed against hers as they reached for the same book. And she noticed how the air felt different when he talked to her, warmer somehow. But she didn't allow herself to think beyond that. She was content with the connection as it was, even though something deeper was growing. One afternoon in early March, when the wind outside was still sharp and winter refused to let go, Liam walked into the bookstore with an expression Emma had never seen on him before. His eyes held excitement, but also something like fear. He hesitated before crossing the room, and that hesitation told Emma instantly that he had something important to say. She placed a stack of books onto the counter and waited. Liam took a moment, looking around the shop as if searching for the right place to start. Finally, he exhaled slowly. "Emma," he said, "I have news." She tried to smile, but her stomach tightened. "Good news or bad?" "I'm not sure yet," he admitted with a small laugh that didn't sound like him. "But it's big." When he finally told her, the words landed heavily. He had been offered a major job in Toronto, a company he admired, a team he'd dreamed of working with, and a position that could change the entire direction of his career. It was the kind of opportunity people waited years for, and he had earned it through talent and persistence. Emma understood immediately why his voice trembled between excitement and uncertainty. "That's amazing," she said, forcing her voice to stay steady. He looked at her, searching her face. "It is. But it means moving. Soon?" There was a long pause, and in that pause, their entire friendship, every shared moment, every hint of unspoken emotion seemed to gather between them like a fragile glass wall. Emma felt the truth pressing on her, asking to be spoken. She wanted to tell him she didn't want him to go. She wanted to say that his presence had become the most meaningful part of her days. She wanted to ask him if he ever felt the same warmth, the same quiet longing, the same ache in silence. But she disdained single quotes. Instead, she nodded. "You should go," she said. "It's what you've worked for." Liam's eyes softened, as if he heard something beneath her words. "Yeah," he whispered. "Maybe." She could tell he was waiting for her to say something else, something real. She could sense it the same way she sensed the tides outside her apartment window. If she said just one honest sentence, even something small like, "I'll miss you too much," everything between them would shift. But fear held her steady. Fear of losing what they already had. Fear of saying too much. Fear of being wrong, so she kept quiet. Liam reached out and touched the counter lightly with his fingers. A nervous gesture she had only seen once before. On the day he told her he left a design firm because they didn't value his ideas. He always tapped surfaces when he felt torn. He finally said, "I wanted to tell you first. Before I tell anyone else." Emma managed a small smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Thank you. That means a lot." He watched her for a moment longer, his gaze searching, almost pleading. But Emma lowered her eyes to the books she was arranging. She couldn't meet his stare. She knew it would reveal everything she was trying to hide. After a moment of silence, Liam nodded slowly, as though accepting an answer he hadn't really asked for. "I should go," he murmured. "I have a lot to figure out." Emma walked him to the door. When he turned to leave, she wished she could stop him, just for a moment. Just long enough to erase the distance forming between them. But she stayed still. She watched him step into the cold afternoon wind, shoulders tense, hands buried in his coat pockets. She didn't call after him when the door closed. The bell jingled softly, and the quiet of the shop felt heavier than usual. The shelves seemed taller, the lights dimmer, the air colder. She went back behind the counter and gripped the edge tightly, trying to steady herself. She told herself she was happy for him, that she should be proud of him. That silence was the mature thing to offer when someone was chasing a dream. But her chest ached in a way she hadn't expected. That evening, Emma walked home along the harbor. The sky was gray, the water restless. The boats rocked gently, their ropes creaking against the docks. She wrapped her scarf tighter around her neck and tried not to think about the empty space Liam would leave behind. But she couldn't escape it. Every street corner, every cafe window, every bookstore memory carried his presence dotted home. She made tea but didn't drink it. She opened a book but didn't read it. She sat on her small couch and stared at the window, watching the lights from the harbor flicker across the glass. She thought about all the times she could have said something, any small confession that hinted at the truth. She thought about the way Liam looked at her sometimes, as if he was waiting for her to give him a sign. She thought about how often she dismissed the idea of speaking up, telling herself the timing wasn't right. Now the moment had passed. Liam didn't message her that night, and she didn't message him either. She kept replaying the afternoon, wishing she could go back and change the ending. She wondered if he felt disappointed. She wondered if he had wanted her to ask him to stay, or at least to admit that she didn't want him to go. But she had stayed quiet the next morning at the bookstore. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. Customers came and went, leaving trails of cold air and small talk. Emma worked mechanically, organizing shelves, ringing purchases, offering recommendations. But her mind drifted constantly to Liam. She imagined him packing his things, making lists, planning his move, stepping into a future she wasn't part of. The truth was simple. She cared for him deeply, more deeply than she had allowed herself to admit. And now she was losing him because she had been too afraid to speak late in the afternoon. While closing the shop, Emma paused by the big front window. Snow had begun to fall, soft, fragile flakes that melted as soon as they touched the sidewalk. She pressed her fingers to the glass and whispered to herself, "Why didn't you say something?" It wasn't a dramatic moment, just a quiet realization settling into her heart. Silence had protected her from vulnerability, but it also cost her something precious. She didn't know what Liam was thinking in Toronto. She didn't know if he would reach out or if he was waiting on her. She didn't know if their story was ending or beginning its hardest chapter. All she knew was this: for the first time, she wished she hadn't kept quiet. She wished she had been brave. But life had already moved one step ahead of her, and the distance between them was growing. Emma Hartley tried to keep herself busy in the weeks after Liam left. The bookstore offered work that required her hands and mind. But even as she shelved books and helped customers, her thoughts kept drifting to him. Each message from Liam felt like a small burst of hope, but almost always they were short, polite, careful. It was as if the distance had made him cautious, measured, like he was protecting himself and, maybe protecting her from emotions that were too complicated to handle over hundreds of miles. Some days, she tried to tell herself that this was okay, that she had given him the freedom to chase his dreams and that was what mattered. But the truth was heavier than she could admit. Every time she passed the cafe across the street, she imagined him sitting there, smiling, or walking in, calling her name. She pictured his laugh, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. And a strange longing settled in her chest that she couldn't shake. It wasn't just missing him, which was missing the what could have been, the moments left unspoken, the confessions that neither had dared to make. The first time she felt truly shaken was on a quiet Friday evening. The store had closed and she was locking the door when she noticed a small envelope tucked beneath the mat. Her heart skipped. It was Liam's handwriting. She hesitated, then picked it up and tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, neatly folded, with words that seemed to tremble with emotion. "Emma, I left without telling you something I should have said. I thought distance would make things easier, but it hasn't. All it has done is remind me of how much I miss you. I keep asking myself if I made a mistake leaving without knowing. If you ever felt the same way I did, you were quiet that day. Maybe I hoped you wouldn't be." Emma read the letter slowly, every word sinking into her heart. She felt a mix of relief and fear, that he might have felt the same, fear that she had waited too long to tell him. The weight of unspoken words pressed on her chest as she reread it. And for the first time, she allowed herself to admit how deeply she cared, how much his presence had changed her life, how empty the bookstore felt without him. That night she couldn't sleep. She stared out the window at the harbor, listening to the soft lap of waves against the docks, imagining him across the miles. Maybe reading her face in memory, maybe feeling the same ache she did. She thought about the afternoons they had spent together, about conversations that stretched into the evening, about laughter shared over coffee. And she realized that she had been holding her feelings back for too long. Fear had silenced her voice, but her heart had never been quiet. The days turned into weeks, and she began writing letters she never sent, just to sort through her thoughts. Each one began the same way. "I wish I had said," or "I should have told you." She wrote about the moments that had meant the most, about how he had made her feel seen in a way no one else ever had. She wrote about longing, about regret, about hope, about the strange, quiet love that had grown between them. Writing made her feel closer to him, even if the letters stayed tucked away in her desk drawer. Then one evening, as snow began to fall softly outside, Emma decided to respond to Liam's letter. She sat at her small wooden table, a cup of tea growing cold beside her, and wrote. She didn't overthink it. She didn't try to craft the perfect words. She wrote the truth, simple and honest. "Liam, I felt everything you did. I was just too scared to say it. Every time you looked at me, I felt it too. Every time we laughed together, every quiet moment, I wanted to say it, but I didn't. I'm sorry for staying quiet. You mattered more than I realized, and I hope this isn't too late." She folded the letter carefully, placed it in an envelope, and went to mail it the next morning. Her hands trembled slightly as she dropped it into the postbox. She didn't know if he would respond. She didn't know if this letter could change the distance, the months, the miles that lay between them. But she felt a weight lift from her chest. She had finally said what she had kept inside for too long. Meanwhile, in Toronto, Liam read her message the day it arrived. He sat at his small apartment window, looking out at the city lights, and for a moment he didn't breathe. Every word she had written mirrored his own feelings, the emotions he had carried silently since leaving Willow Harbor. A smile slowly spread across his face, mixed with relief, longing, and a little disbelief. She had felt it too. She had felt the same quiet, steady pull that he had. He had not imagined it. She had not imagined it. The following week, Liam returned to Maine for a short visit. He didn't announce it. He just appeared at the bookstore one chilly afternoon, leaning against the doorframe with that soft smile Emma had missed so much. She froze, unsure how to react, unsure if she should run or speak or laugh. But he stepped inside, and it was like the world had tilted back into place. The months of distance melted into the air around them, unnoticed by anyone else but felt entirely by them both. They talked first like nothing had changed. Small talk, updates, questions about books and coffee. But the undercurrent of emotion was impossible to ignore. Every glance lingered, every touch felt electric, every pause in conversation carried weight. When the afternoon light fell across the shelves, Emma finally let herself say aloud the words that had been trapped for months. "I was scared," she admitted softly. "Scared of saying how I felt. Scared it would ruin whatever this was." Liam reached out, touching her hand lightly. "I was scared too," he said. "I thought leaving was the right choice, but all I could think about was you. Every day I kept imagining. You here, smiling? You're everything I didn't want to lose." They stood there, hands touching, hearts open, and the quiet hum of the bookstore around them disappeared. It was as if time had slowed to give them a moment just for themselves. Neither needed to speak more. The honesty in their voices, the look in their eyes. The unspoken promise between them was enough. That night, they walked along the harbor together, snow crunching under their feet. The water reflected the city lights in the distance, and the air was crisp and alive. Liam stopped and turned to her. "Emma," he said, "I don't want to be apart again. I don't want to wonder what could have been. I want this us here, now." Emma looked at him, her heart pounding. "I want that too," she whispered. I didn't know if you felt it." "I always did," he said, "and I needed to know if you did too." She smiled through the tears threatening to fall. They didn't rush. They didn't need to. That evening, they walked slowly, savoring the steps, the wind, the quiet intimacy of shared understanding. Months of silence, longing, and distance had brought them here. And now the unspoken words had been spoken, the fears faced. The hearts bared. The days that followed were filled with a gentle, new closeness. Emma and Liam spent hours together in the bookstore and cafe, exploring Willow Harbor as if seeing it for the first time. They shared stories, laughter, and soft conversations about dreams, mistakes, and hopes for the future. There were no grand gestures, only steady, sincere moments that built a foundation stronger than months of hesitation could shake. They had finally let honesty guide them. Every night, Emma reflected on the weeks they had been apart. She realized that staying quiet had taught her the weight of unspoken feelings, but also the value of courage. She had finally chosen to speak, and that choice had changed everything. And Liam, she saw, had done the same. Distance had forced them to confront their emotions. And now, closer than ever, they embraced a love rooted in patience, understanding, and honesty. One evening, as they sat on the small porch of Emma's apartment, watching the snow fall and the harbor lights twinkle, Liam reached for her hand. "You know," he said softly, "I think silence was the hardest part. Waiting, wondering, hoping. It's a strange kind of ache." Emma nodded, squeezing his hand. "Yes, but now we know. And that's enough." They didn't need to say more. Their smiles, their intertwined fingers, and the quiet confidence of shared feelings were proof enough. The months of longing and distance had made them stronger, more certain. They had accepted what they couldn't control, faced their fears, and now could embrace what they had always wanted. As the harbor lights reflected on the water, Emma leaned her head on Liam's shoulder. The ache of unspoken words had been replaced with the warmth of truth. Their story, once paused by hesitation and fear, was now unfolding slowly, gently, beautifully, just as it was meant to. And for the first time in months, Emma felt entirely at peace.